Z, thank you so much for making time for this. I've been looking forward to this for so long.
I'm very happy to be here.
So much I want to talk to you about.
Fire at will.
I thought to start this conversation, it would be interesting to explore the idea of infinite willpower. What's your take on that?
So this is something that I think a lot of people struggle with, this whole idea of, well, we don't really have a lot of willpower. The fact of the matter is human beings by nature actually have infinite willpower. The problem is that as the day wears on, as you make more and more decisions, and as you get into what is called decision fatigue, and that can come from big decisions, small decisions, all the little, minute little things that you have to decide over the course of the day. When that decision fatigue starts setting in, the brain basically starts telling you that, you need to conserve willpower, conserve willpower. So as the day wears on, think of it as an opening through which willpower is pouring through, and that opening starts getting tighter and tighter and tighter. And this is why, as we were discussing earlier, you will make your worst decisions in the latter part of the day. You will make the bad calls to your ex during the night. You will binge drink or eat later on in the night. You'll have junk food later at night. Midnight snack also happens later at night. That's because your willpower has sort of dwindled, or your brain has told you that you need to conserve willpower for the next day, and you can't really make better decisions as the day wears on. And this is also why it's important to front load your major decision making in the beginning of the day, while relegating all the smaller decisions to the previous night. So think about all the little decisions that you need to make in the morning about your day, what you're going to wear, whether you're going to take a shower that morning, what kind of route you're going to take to work, all those little decisions. If you've mapped them out the previous night, that's a whole bunch of tiny little decisions that you have removed from the morning. And then in the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hours, depending on how focused you can be, you can just reserve that time for the major tasks of the day, the things that are going to take the most amount of willpower, of focus, energy, attention, and then relegate the smaller decisions or the smaller tasks, tedium, so to speak, towards the latter part of the day. So as far as I'm concerned, I just don't think there's such a thing as dwindling willpower or lack of willpower. I think it comes down to a mindset more than anything else, and basically training yourself to constantly be in the zone.
I love that. That's so powerful. And I just remembered that when I was working out, and I used to bring out my gym gear the night before, it just instantly prompted me to go and hit that workout without even thinking. In retrospect, that's really powerful.
If I may, so there's something very interesting about the gym. There was a study that they conducted where the bigger problem, most of the willpower was actually used, I think it was about 80%, was used to actually get to the gym.
Really?
So the problem isn't the workout itself, it's actually getting yourself to the gym. And most people that got to the gym and just said, I'll just go for 5 minutes. Once they started working out, then they would continue working out for the next 10, 15, 20, whatever amount of time they needed to work out. But the big bottleneck was actually getting to the gym itself as opposed to the workout part of it.
Wow.
So you have to be constantly mindful of, if you want to create that habit for a long time and for a lifetime, it's consistency that's more important than frequency. Right. So you have to do it. Even if you do it for 5 minutes that day, you got to go and do it.
Right.
As opposed to being like, well, I'm kind of tired today. I've had too many Oreos.
Yeah. I love how calculated you are in everything. And having understood the idea of infinite willpower, we can sort of take this into habit formation.
Sure.
How are habits formed?
Interesting question. So habits generally, and this is also true of any kind of addiction that you have. I mean, of course, there's much harsher forms of addiction that take a lot more than just understanding this process and breaking the loop. But habit formation has to do with dopamine loops. So it's your brain associating a certain activity with the pleasure that it received, specifically dopamine that it produces in your little skull. And then that creating this loop of, well, every time I do this, it's going to make me happy. This is what the nicotine loop is. And this applies to pretty much everything else. So there's 4 aspects to any kind of habit formation. The first aspect of that is you have to have a trigger. So the trigger has got to be something that happens on a daily basis. So it can be something like, when I feel sunlight on my face, because like today, what if it's cloudy outside? So if you don't feel the sunlight on your face, how are you going to do it? So you have to carefully think about what are the things that you will do every single day, no matter what. You will go to sleep every day. You will get up from bed every day. You will likely brush your teeth every day. You will go and use the loo every day. So what are, some of those intrinsic things that are just a part of your daily routine that you don't necessarily need to think about or plan out? They just kind of happen. And then you use those as triggers. So for example, in order to build my reading habit, one of the things that I had to do was to link my reading time with when I get into bed. Because getting into bed is the trigger. And when I get into bed, the book is right there. I'll just pick it up, even if I'm reading for 1 or 2 pages. So that's number one. The second aspect of habit formation is you have to have a reward, and the reward has to be primal. So it can't just be, well, I get mental satisfaction out of reading. It's not gonna work. I mean, if you're mentally extremely strong and you can really relish in the fact that you've read 20 or 30 or 60 pages or whatever, maybe. But for most people, it has to be primal, and the primal rewards are usually associated with survival: food, drink, sex, and so on and so forth. So things that are intrinsically tied to human survival, sleep. So those are major rewards that the reward has to come immediately after performing that task. So trigger, activity, reward.
Wow.
The third and fourth aspect of habit formation are linked, and they are low bar and high bar. And what that essentially means is you have to set the minimum standard that you have to hit every day.
Okay.
So again, to go back to the idea of habit formation regarding reading books, low bar, for example, would be something like, I'm going to read a page a day. I mean, who can't read a page a day, right? Or a paragraph a day. You can at least do a paragraph. Even if you are dying and you've had the longest day and you just want to sleep, you can pick up the book and you can read just a page and close it right back up. But that consistency of doing it, hitting that low bar every single day and associating a sense of accomplishment by at least hitting the low bar is very important. And then the high bar, of course, is what's the highest amount that I'm willing to go. So, maybe you associate it with time. I'm going to read for 30 minutes. Maybe you associate it with pages. Once I'm done with 60 pages, maybe I can read a little bit more, but that's my high bar. Like past that, I need to sleep. Otherwise, it start interfering with my sleep cycle. So those 4 things: trigger, reward, low bar, and high bar. These are all the things that are used in both habit formation and breaking the loop of habits. So it's the same thing. So if you have a nasty habit, something that you hate doing, but you can't stop doing it, I keep saying this constantly. Everything is an engineering problem. So look at it in terms of what are the triggers that make me do it? What are the rewards that I get from it? What's my low bar? What's my high bar? And then break the first 2. For example, a while back, I, bluntly speaking, was addicted to shisha. I've never been a smoker. I'm not really ever into drugs. I'm not really into any kind of substance abuse. But shisha was something that I realized one day that it had become sort of this habit where I would come home, in order to unwind, I would make it, smoke it. And that was my way of sort of processing the day and kind of winding everything down. And the day that I realized that this is a habit. In order to break it, the trigger is getting home. Because I'm getting home from work pretty much every single day. So that's the trigger. So that has to be removed. Then the reward is the euphoria that you get, the high that you get from smoking molasses or tobacco. So that has to be removed. And my simplest solution was I just packed up my entire shisha apparatus and I threw it in the garbage. Because if I come home and it triggers and it's not physically there, I can't do anything about it.
Right. So you removed it from your environment.
Yep.
That's really powerful. I want to stay with this idea for a bit. We live in an instant age of gratification.
Yes.
And our smartphones give us instant gratification and dopamine hits so easily, we don't even know it. And it's doing very bad things to young people.
Yep.
Like people keep investing in their ego and persona, and they're becoming fake celebrities. And we were talking about that idea of how it's really practical and important to do what you do every day consistently and become good at it. And that was what heroes did in mythology throughout history. If you look at mythological stories like Hercules and all of these great guys, they accomplished something, they built something really powerful, and that's why they were so great and they were titans. But now it's so easy to become a fake celebrity. And I want to understand why it's so important to do things every day if we want to achieve that level of mastery.
Well, I think that's the difference between what used to at one point be called expertise and what is expertise now, right? Expertise used to be this thing that you would build towards for decades. You would practice your craft, continue at it, do it consistently for a very long time, and then you would be called an expert. Now you can read a Wikipedia article in 5 minutes and instantly become the expert in that particular subject because you've memorized a couple of different figures and a couple of different facts about it. So it's frustrating to watch. And this is not to say that, a lot of these, for example, social media celebrities are not working very hard at it. I mean, there's a lot of, YouTubers out there and other individuals that primarily use social media, but it actually takes a lot of work. They have to hone that craft on a daily basis. They have to write their scripts. They have to think about exactly how is it they're going to present information. They have to think about what content actually excites their audience. And they're essentially capitalizing on what they feel that the audience needs. I don't really have a problem with that because that still takes effort, energy, consistency.
Right.
You have to do it. I mean, at any given point in time, if you're, for example, a YouTube artist, over the course of time, if you're building certain sequence of videos in a certain amount of time and then you suddenly go away for 2 weeks, you will definitely see a decline in your subscribers because people will be like, well, clearly he's not consistent. So that's I don't really have a problem with the whole fake celebrity culture or whatever.
Right.
My problem is with this whole sense of simply because something that we tweeted got 1,000 retweets out of the blue, suddenly we're important. That it used to be 15 minutes of fame, but now it's 15 seconds of fame. And it goes back to that whole dopamine loop thing. Social media in the modern age is designed to replicate that. And if you look at how it triggers the dopamine loop in the brain, it's the same dopamine loop that is created through alcohol abuse, through drug abuse. It's essentially the same exact chemical imbalance in the brain. So I think it's important to be mindful of that and be mindful of the fact that it's very easy to create sort of this one-hit wonder, to have your 15 seconds of fame and to try to ride that wave out and think that you've accomplished something great and important. But longevity doesn't really come from quick hits. Longevity comes from consistency. And you mentioned all these people from myth and legend.
Right.
But even if you look at religious history, if you look at political history, all these great leaders that used to inspire people and really have this massive following, they did something consistently for a very long time. You can look at something as recent as Obama or Martin Luther King or Qaid-e-Azam, or go all the way back to the time of the Holy Prophet. These are individuals that consistently followed a pattern for a while. Until they got exceptionally good at it, to the point where you couldn't really challenge their craft.
Really powerful. I know we already dove into time and the way you view your time and how you deconstruct everything like a system. It reminds me something that William Blake, the English poet, wrote. So he says, to see a world in a grain of sand, to see heaven in a wild flower, hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. And that really made me look at time in a very different way.
Yep.
And the way you look at time is so interesting. I want to know your take on how you view time.
Well, my take on time is it's the one resource you can't have more of. Time is the one finite resource that we have. You can earn grain, money, fame, power. You can earn pretty much everything. And you could make the argument that you could buy more time with better medical equipment, better medical facilities, taking care of your health. You could live longer, better. Sure, but even if you were to live to 100, there's still an expiry date to it, right? Like nothing in life everything is impermanent. So for me, time is the most precious resource that you have. So if you were to gauge time against everything else, if you were to look at, the most important elements that exist on Earth, like natural resources or gold or platinum, and then you were to look at time and treat time as the most important resource, and then kind of go back and think about, am I actually treating it as the most important resource? I think that's where that change in perspective comes from. Because if you can't buy more time, if this is the one thing that you cannot control, you get up in the morning, irrespective of what you do, the 24 hours will pass. They will not care for you. They will not stop. The show just kind of continues going around. So how do you then treat time? And the way to do it is to do it with respect. I mean, you have to think of time as this finite resource that you have limited access to over the course of your life, and then start mapping and planning out your day in a manner that respects that time, as opposed to just wasting it in activities that either don't benefit you or don't bring you joy. So I'm not really saying that you shouldn't do things that make you happy. You should absolutely do things that make you happy. You'll be a miserable person otherwise. So for me, time spent has to be along the lines of something that benefits you, that makes you a better person, that hones your craft, that improves your professional ambit or whatever, or it has to bring enjoyment, a sense of accomplishment, a sense of, I'm hanging out with friends or family or whatever the case may be. So that's how I treat time, and breaking it down into subsequent chunks.
For someone who's watching this right now and they're just starting out, they want to get the most kick out of their day. How can they start framing that problem? Maybe by asking better questions or using any tools, tactics, mindsets, stories.
Right, so this is all anecdotal, right? There's a range of different techniques that people have formulated over time, different ways to manage time, different ways to focus, different ways to tap into your reservoir of willpower. And I think it really varies from person to person. There's no set singular formula for, well, this is what's going to work for absolutely everyone. For example, I think earlier we were speaking about meditation. It's, from everything that I understand about meditation and that I've read about meditation, it's this magical thing that just, if you can actually do it properly, it gives you incredible focus, it improves your health, it improves your cognitive abilities. It's just not for me. I've tried it, it doesn't work, I can't really seem to focus on it too much. Meditation is one area so I've decided to reprioritize and actually focus on things that work for me. So I think that's my first answer, that you have to do what works for you. And in order for you to know what works for you, you have to go out, you have to seek the different ways in which you can manage time and actually practically try them. I think a major gap for what a lot of people don't do as far as the self-help industry is concerned, a lot of people are very enamored with this sort of romantic notion of, reading books and really understanding how the mind works in the self-help industry. But at the end of the day, all of it is meaningless if you can't put it into some kind of practical form. So whatever you are learning, put it into practice. Do it for a day, a week, a month. See how well that works out for you. If it doesn't, change tactics a little bit. The mechanism that I use is, like you said earlier, the 1,440 minutes in a day. I have most of those mapped out. Not all of them, because you can't possibly map out every single minute. But most of those minutes I've mapped out. So I've decided this is the amount of time that I'm going to use for sleeping. This is the amount that I'm going to use for resting. At work, I'm going to work in these 25-minute, 30-minute chunks. In between, I'm going to put 10, 15 minutes for walking around, talking to people, taking a break, using the loo, having some water, having some coffee, whatever the case may be. Because this whole idea of, well, I'm working from 9 to 5 with an hour-long lunch break in the middle. It's this very archaic, anachronistic, old concept. No one is really able to focus hardcore without ever skipping a beat for 4 straight hours. And then eat lunch, and then go into food coma, and then still focus for another 3 hours. So I think that's a very old and sort of dated way of looking at things. You have to do it and this works for me. You have to do it in bursts. A burst of 20, 25 minutes of solid, concentrated work, take a 10-minute break. Get up, walk around, and definitely get up. The kind of work that, for example, you and I do, we have a very sedentary lifestyle. We just kind of sit in our chair all day. That will shave years off of your life. So get up and walk around.
Right.
So I think that's the key thing. You need to know whatever it is that you're trying to do, whether it's time management, whether it's focus, whether it's how to manage different projects, whether it's leadership. What are some of the ways that people are doing it, and then practically employing it into your life until you hit that notch that it just kind of fits. And it will. It's like that kid's toy. Remember the one that has the circular block and the triangular block and the square block. You'll keep trying to fit it. Eventually you'll hit it, but it takes time and effort and practice.
Right. So just don't give up and keep finding what works for you.
Yep.
That's really powerful. I hope whoever is watching this, I know I'm going to rewatch this many times just to really internalize that. And whoever's watching, they can really benefit. Guys, you can start applying this to you right now. Like, this is magic right here.